Hello everybody, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Welcome back. Time for some more stories from William. He's such a rascally lad. So, how are you doing? What are you up to? Sorry, I'm just clanking my coffee mug there. What are you up to? I hope you're having fun at the moment. And if you're not having fun, that life isn't being just too overwhelming. Because sometimes it is. That's just the way life is, I suppose. So we are still reading, we're back reading more of the William books by Richmal Crompton, who was, apparently she was a school teacher and also didn't have any kids of her own, but she had nephews, I think, from what I managed to find out about her. I would say that as a teacher, she was a very good observer of young people and their behaviours, and also possibly had a nephew or two who she was able to pull some ideas about William from what they might have been like, or maybe even memories of when she was growing up. As authors, there's a tendency to use just little inspiring snippets from life and the people around us. It's not too unusual. So, lots of fun. Hi, if you're new here, hi, I'm Jev. I read old-fashioned children's stories because otherwise they're lost forever. Well, other people will read them too, but there's not that many people reading them anymore. These are stories that I grew up reading myself, and my parents and my grandparents read them. A lot of the books that I read here are actually books that belonged to my parents and grandparents that I also read. I have a great appreciation for other places and other time periods and the ways people used to live, just because of a lot of that sort of awareness that came from growing up reading about these things. I have a tendency to ramble. I get lost on the page often when I'm reading. While I'm in the middle of a sentence, I can actually get lost and not be able to find where I got up to. That is one of the amusements of being here, listening to me reading. I do absolutely terrible accents. I try not to do an accent. I try to just speak the way I normally speak, and occasionally I will throw in a little bit of an accent, but it will usually vary a lot as we go. What else? Oh yeah, I have 3 tips if you're new here. The first one is make sure you have something to drink. Water is great. You can have something to drink as well as water, but make sure you have some water because it keeps your brain and your body functioning well. Also, I've also got something else to drink. I've got my coffee. Have something to snack on. So that's point 2. I've got crackers today, cheese-flavoured crackers, and it means that you can keep your mind focused on what you're listening to if you have something yummy to snack on. And also, number 3, just trying to reach it. Number 3, somewhere comfortable to sit. I've got a nice squishy cushion here. Not that I need it. I'm sitting on my office chair, which is skating away with me again. So occasionally you'll see me wiggling the chair around. It's just because I'm trying to get it so the wheels go sideways so the chair doesn't roll backwards. What else? I think that's about it in terms of my 3 tips for visitors. I read live on Twitch 3 afternoons a week. New Zealand time, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I then transfer the stories that I have read, the recordings of the stories that I've read, minus the overlay that is around what we can see if you're watching this on Twitch. Minus that overlay, and I go and load them up on YouTube into playlists for each of the books that I have read. And so if you've missed anything, that's the place to get it. Although you will probably have to wait about 2 weeks before you see something that I've read, because they're available on Twitch for 2 weeks and then I transfer them. What else? I try to, if the book has illustrations, I try to show them behind me, alongside me, so that you get a little bit of a feel of the way the books were. Most of the books at the moment I'm reading are from my old first generation iPad mini, because it's great to be able to keep technology going, even if it's old and out of date. But the only thing it can do is go online and download my ebooks and then show them to me so I can read them to you. You can't install any apps on it, any new apps. The existing ones that it was built with, it's okay. So it saves it going into landfill, which is great. Otherwise, I read physical books that look a little bit like this sort of era. So they have these sort of buff coloured pages. They're usually a little bit thicker. Often the page itself will have a little bit of texture to it. And where appropriate, it will also have illustrations such as these, which are based off etchings. And as you can see, looking at those pictures, it looks like it's an Edwardian era book. It was given to my great uncle, in 1897, this particular book. That's how old it is. Some of the books that I read are newer than that. Some of them are older than that. I've read Millie Molly Mandy. I've read The Secret Garden, A Little Princess, Alice in Wonderland, The Wind in the Willows, The Would Be Goods, and the other books from those series, a whole lot of other things like that. And there are more still to read, so we shall continue reading them. And here we go. Let's get on with reading, shall we? So I hope you're comfortable. Find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit. And if you have to be working or studying or doing chores while you're listening, that's fine. You don't have to give me your full attention. But if you want to get involved with chatting with me, that's also cool. There is a chat box here. I'm obviously talking to the people watching me on Twitch at the moment. There is a chat box. I will respond to things in chat where appropriate, so that will be often at the beginning or the end of the reading, and also in chapter breaks. Unless I have mentioned something or asked about something and you're answering or addressing what I have said and it's relevant for what I'm currently reading, in which case I'll interrupt the reading and read out your comments, and we can get into a discussion about things that way. We do try to keep things family friendly here, because there are children, grandchildren and their grandparents and parents who watch these, and so that's one of the reasons why there are some pretty stringent chat bans and word filter systems in place. So don't write with all capitals, don't use lots and lots of punctuation marks. If you are trying to get around chat bans by keeping things really, really vague, you're likely to get banned from the channel. So just because, it's nice to have a safe place for young people and old people to be able to enjoy a little bit of story time. And if you want to be inappropriate, go and find somewhere that they appreciate you being inappropriate rather than here. So anyway, let's get on with reading. We are reading William Again by Richmal Crompton. Published in 1923, and we're up to chapter 5, which is called Not Much. So here we go. William walked down the street, singing lustily. His strident, unmelodious young voice rang out harshly. His face was purple with vocal effort. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose true, dare to make it known. And no, I'm not going to be singing them for you because I don't know the tunes. Becoming tired of that subject and not knowing the next verse, he abruptly changed his tune. I'm longing for the dear old home again, that cottage in the little winding lane. I can see the roses climbing, I can hear the sweet bells chiming, and I'm longing for the dear old home again. Inhabitants of the street along which William was passing hastily shut their front windows, or fled from their front rooms, or uttered loud objurgations of William according to their characters. William passed along singing and unmoved. A parrot, who had refused all invitations to converse since its purchase, suddenly raised its voice with William's in piercing screams. The quiet street had become a nightmare uproar of inharmonious sound. A man threw a boot at William from an upstairs window. It hit a hen in a neighbour's garden. The hen added its voice to William's and the parrot's. William passed along, singing and unmoved. I've a girl in Navarra, I've a girl in Sahara, I've got a few sweet girlies who I've promised to be true to. Obviously, these were popular songs at the time. He turned off the main street. The hideous sound gradually died away in the distance, and quiet reigned once more in that vicinity. Windows were opened. People returned to their front rooms. The parrot relapsed into his customary silence. William went on singing towards his home. At the gate of his garden, he changed his song for a toneless, penetrating whistle. He whistled his way blithely up the drive. His father flung up a window fiercely. "Stop that noise!" he called. William proceeded on his way. "Stop that noise!" William stopped. "What noise?" he said. That foul noise you were making just now." "Whistling? I didn't know you meant whistling when you said noise," William went on, drawing nearer the window. "I didn't know you was talking to me at all just at first. I thought—" William was obviously anxious to carry on a friendly conversation with a fellow being. His father hastily slammed the window and returned to his armchair. William opened his mouth as for a burst of song. Then he seemed suddenly to change his mind and pursed his lips as if for a whistle. Then, after a breathless moment of silence, he unpursed them and hummed untunefully under his breath. And humming untunefully under his breath, he entered by the side door. The hall was empty. Through the open kitchen door he could see his mother and Ethel, his grown-up sister, cutting sandwiches at one table and the cook and housemaid at another. He went into the kitchen. Sorry, just making sure my phone has its volume turned down and that my headphones have the same. Yes, that's good. We'll carry on. He went into the kitchen. "Who are you making sandwiches for?" he demanded. His mother surveyed him sadly. "I do wish you would keep clean for more than 2 minutes together, William," she said. William smoothed back an obstreperous mop of hair with a grimy hand. "I hope you've got a pen or pencil and paper to write down these big words that we are hearing so that you can add them to your vocabulary, so you can learn them and add them. It's one of the things about reading old books is you get a wider range of words in use often than what you otherwise would. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on things on my other monitor, just in case I need them, because sometimes I do, for looking after things here. Oh, just a moment. Okay. And then we shall carry on reading. That's what I thought. Carrying on. Right, here we go. His mother surveyed him sadly. "I do wish you could keep clean for more than 2 minutes together, William," she said. William smoothed back an obstreperous mop of hair with a grimy hand. "Yes," he agreed mechanically, "but who are you making sandwiches for?" Ethel paused with a butter-laden knife in mid-air. "Don't, for heaven's sake, tell him," she said, "and let's hope and pray that he'll keep out of the way till it's over. It'll be enough trouble without him hanging round." William ejected the tip of his tongue in her direction behind his mother's back. "Yes, but who are you making sandwiches for?" he said slowly and emphatically with an air of patience tried beyond endurance. I think it'd be rather a help than otherwise, you know, said his mother, carefully arranging pieces of tongue on a slice of bread and butter. Back in those days, people used to, there's a particular type of meat called tongue, and it was a bit of a delicacy, but it was just in use. It doesn't tend to be used these days. It's probably all ground up and included in other things. I grew up eating it. It wasn't my favourite, but some people loved it. Anyway, carrying on. Ethel merely shrugged her shoulders. I suppose, said William with heavy sarcasm, you're making 'em just for fun. Clever, said Ethel, cutting off the crusts of a sandwich. William, whose appetite was a never-failing quality, fell upon the crusts and began to eat them. Don't spoil your lunch, dear, murmured Mrs. Brown, that's his mother. No, promised William, but all I want to know is who are you making sandwiches for? Oh, do say something and stop him saying that awful sentence, groaned Ethel. Well, dear, began his mother persuasively, would you like a little party this afternoon? People coming to tea? Asked William guardedly. Yes, dear, you'd be such a help, and, William interrupted, I'll eat up all they leave afterwards for you, he said obligingly, but I think I won't come this time. Thank heaven, murmured Ethel. I'm not much good at parties, said William with perfect truth and with a perfunctory grimace at his sister. But wouldn't you like to help hand things round, darling? Asked his mother. No thanks, but I'll eat up all they've left for you afterwards. How kind, said Ethel. William, goaded at last to verbal retaliation, turned on her. If you say much more to me, he said darkly, I'll not help you at any of your parties. He then echoed her derisive laughter in a piercing tenor. William, darling, sighed Mrs. Brown, do go and wash your face. William crammed a handful of crusts into his mouth, put the cushion from the armchair onto the top of the cat, and went out into the hall. Here he burst suddenly into a flood of raucous sound. Oh, who will o'er the downs with me? Oh, who will with me ride? Mr. Brown opened the library door. Will you stop that confounded noise? He demanded emphatically. I'm sorry, said William amicably. I forgot you didn't like music. After lunch, William sallied forth once more into the world. He was feeling slightly bored. Ginger and Douglas and Henry, his 3 sworn allies, were all away on their holidays. William did not consider holidays unmixed blessings. Anyway, he considered that there ought to be a law that everyone should go on their holidays at the same time. He walked again down the village street. He did not sing this time. Instead, he threw stones at the telegraph poles. He stood at one telegraph pole and tried to hit the one across the road. Every pole that was hit was to William a magnificent tiger, falling lifeless, shot by William through the heart. The parrot, catching sight of him again, gave an excited scream. This put William off his aim. He screamed back at the parrot, missed the telegraph pole, and hit a King Charles spaniel in a garden. It's a type of dog. They're about this big and they're kind of wavy, fluffy dogs. One of the smallish dogs before the current rash of popular dogs, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. That's what they were. And they're often brown and white, white with big brown spots, or black and white. And they've got long droopy ears and a sort of a short turned up nose, not as short as a pug dog. I should find a picture of one for you. The picture I've got behind, I was going to say before, when I was talking about illustrations, the picture I've got behind me is from a village in the sort of area that the author was known to have had in mind when she was writing the William books, as the sort of place where William would have been living. So you've got hedgerows, oak trees, cottages. Some of them would have been thatched roofs, some of them wouldn't. And then over here you've got things, it's an unpaved road with potholes. So it's kind of a clay surface with stones set into it. And then over here you've got a ditch and then another hedge and then fields beyond. And often William is walking down the street, walking down the road, and there'll be things happening in the ditches and what else like that. I'm just looking up the particular type of dog this is. You will recognise the sort of dog, I'm sure. And I'm going to give you a picture. Let's see if I can find more than one. Sorry. Just because it's mentioned, that's all. And then we will carry on. Right, picture, finding it for you. These are the sort of dog, these things here with the long floppy ears, cute face. Often they will have dark spots, like black spots instead of these brown ones. There's a young one, there's a slightly older one. A common small dog back in the day. Now we have Bichon Frise and we have a whole bunch of other small ones, and I can't remember the names of them at the moment, sorry. So much for that. I was going to tell you what they were. Can't remember. Oh well. And I am going to look to see if I can find what picture I am meant to be showing you next. I think it's that one. And I'll get that resized so it's easier to show you. And then we shall carry on with reading because we'll get to the picture shortly. And don't actually need it right now. Right, carrying on. He screamed back at the parrot, missed the telegraph pole, and hit a King Charles Spaniel in a garden. He then dropped the rest of his stones and fled from the indignant owner of the dog. She pursued him down the street. "You cruel boy! I'll tell your father! A poor dumb animal!" She gave up the chase at the end of the road, and William went on his way whistling, his hands in his pockets. At a bend in the road he stood suddenly silent. A group of children were walking along in front of him. They had evidently just come out of the station. This is the railway station. At their head walked a tall, thin man. The children, boys and girls, were about William's age. They were clean and tidy, but badly dressed, and with pale Cockney faces. Cockney is a particular people of a particular area in London. It's often referring to an accent that they have. But it can actually mean a little bit more than that. Sorry, I'm just looking here for the right page. Okay, 13. Just check that I have the right one there. Yes, I do. Good. Carrying on. Pale Cockney faces, so they're city dwellers. William hurried along the road. A little girl turned round. "Hello," she said with a friendly grin. "Did you nearly get left behind? What's your name?" William liked the almost incredible frizziness of her over-crimped hair. He liked the dirty feather in her hat and the violent blue of her dress. He liked her white stockings and yellow boots. He thought her altogether entirely charming. He liked the way she talked. He found her whole personality intriguing. His grim, freckled features relaxed into an ingratiating smile. "William," he replied, "what's yours?" "Heglantine," she said. "Nice name, isn't it? Me sister's called Oratia. Lovely. Coming on the train, weren't it? It was evident that she took him for one of her party. William grasped at the opportunity of continuing the acquaintance. He said non-committally. Didn't you see you're on the train? Such a crowd, weren't there? Some from St. Luke's and some from St. Mary's. I dunno half of them, and I don't think much of some of them by the looks. I were just looking after for someone to pal up with. William's heart swelled with delight at his implied superiority. Sorry about the accent. I'm reading the way she's written it here. A boy in front turned round. He was pale and undersized and wore a loud checked cap that would have fitted a grown man. "Hello, Freckles," he said to William. William glared at him fiercely. "You just mind what you say to me," he began darkly. Eglantine quickly interposed. "Now then, Herbert Holmes," she said sharply, tossing her tight curls and feathered hat. None of your voice here. You mind what you says to me and my friends." The boy grinned and dropped behind with them. "What we going to do anyways?" he said in a mollifying tone of friendship. "Not much to do in the country, is there? No pushes, no nothing." "There's games," said William, deliberately adopting the accent of his new friends. He decided to adopt it permanently. He considered it infinitely more interesting than that used by his own circle. "Games," said the boy in the checked cap, with infinite scorn. "Running races and such like, and looking at cows and picking flowers. Thanks, not much." William stored up this expression for future use. "Well, you needn't have come, Herbert Holmes," said Eglantine sharply, "if you didn't want to." "They said," said Elbert grimly, "as how there'd be a tea, and I'm not one to miss a tea. A proper tea with cake and all. Not much." William was watching the large check cap with fascinating eyes. "Where'd you get that cap?" he said at last. "Dunno," said the boy. He took it off and looked at William's. "Like to swap?" William nodded. The boy whipped off the cap without a word and handed it to William, taking William's school cap in return. Up there. Up past the overlay up there, in the picture of the cover of the book, William's got a dark blue and white. It's like a school cap. A little bit like a modern cap, which has a peak out the front, except that the peak is much, much shorter and it's not curved the same way, and the actual cap itself doesn't come down as far. It sits up here. And they were commonly worn at school. Anyway, as part of the school uniform. Taking William's school cap in return, William, with a sigh of bliss, put it on. It enveloped his whole head and forehead, the large peak standing out over his nose. This is the boy's cap. He pulled it firmly down. It was the cap of his dreams, the cap of a brigand chief. "We are smart, ain't we?" said Eglantine with a little high-pitched laugh. William felt blissfully happy, walking along beside her. "What does your father do?" demanded Elbert of William suddenly. "What does yours?" replied William guardedly. "He goes round with a barrel selling things," said Elbert. "Mine sweeps chimneys," said Eglantine shrilly. "He gets that black." They both turned on William. "What does yours do?" William bowed his head in shame. He could not bear to confess that his father neither sold things nor swept chimneys, but merely caught a train to London and his office every morning. "Ain't got no father," he said doggedly. "You're a orphan then," said Eglantine with an air of wide knowledge of the world. Grunted William. And here we have the picture. They're walking along the road. So this is Elbert in William's cap, and there's William wearing Elbert's cap, and this is the girl with the frizzly hair. This picture doesn't show a striped school cap. That's just the way it's been illustrated. Let's see if I can find a picture of a school cap for you. Yes, we've gone back to having caps for schools because of the fact that we're trying to keep children out of the direct impact of the sun, unlike what they used to be. School cap. That one will show. This one will do the job nicely. Except that this, in William's day and at William's type of school, it would not have had the tassel which this one is showing. There you go. There's the cap. See how it's a little bit like a modern cap, except that this brim on it is not as wide as a modern cap would be. And also this one shows a tassel on it, and it's made out of velvet. But the sort of cap that William would have had for school would have been just out of cotton drill or something like that. Definitely not with velvet, just because that was more of a posh sort of a one than would have been commonly in use for the sort of school that William went to, because it was just a country school, village school. Country village school. Anyway, so they're walking along and William's quite happy with this hat, which is well oversized. You saw how far it hung over his face. Carry on to the next page. William felt blissfully happy walking along beside her. That's the caption on that picture. Okay, so, and we got up to, you're an orphan then, said Eglantine, with an air of wide knowledge of the world. Grunted William. At this point, the tall, thin man in front stopped and collected his flock around him. He wore a harassed and anxious expression. Now, he said, are we all here? 1, 2, 3, 4, he counted to himself, wagging a thin forefinger round the group as he spoke. Please, sir, William's a orphan, said Eglantine excitedly. Yes, yes, said the tall man. Let me see, I seem to make you one too many, but no matter. William, an orphan, how sad, poor little fellow. Come along, we're going to play in the woods first, children, then go to a kind friend's to tea. The vicar rang her up this morning, and she very kindly offered to give you tea. Ooh, are you having ideas about where this might be going? Very kind, very kind. Yes, yes, this way, I think. Again, the little procession moved along its way. Softy, commented Eglantine scornfully. He's one of the swanks, he is. He's a friend of the vicar's, 'cause the vicar couldn't come. Ain't got no patience with him myself. Why can't they talk like other folks? Like herself, because where she lives, everyone speaks the way she does. And so she thinks that someone like this chap, sorry, itchy nose, this chap is being over posh compared with the sort of voices that people had and accent that people have in the area where she goes, where she lives. Anyway, William redoubled his efforts to acquire his friend's intonation. Yes, why, I'd like to know, he said aggressively, pulling his large and loud tweed cap yet further over his eyes. The tall, thin man at the head of the procession stopped again. I'll just go into this house, children, he said, and ask the way to the woods. He went up the pathway and knocked at the door. The group of children clustered round the gate and watched him. The door was opened by a housemaid. The thin man disappeared inside. The door was shut. Are we going to hang around him all the time? Asked William discontentedly. Won't be any fun. Not much, he added proudly after a slight pause. Well, he knows the way, don't he? And we don't, said Albert. I do, said William. You come with me, quick, afore he comes out. They followed William silently round the back of the house and across a field. From the other end of the field they caught a glimpse of the tall man coming out of the house, taking off his hat with a polite bow, then standing at the gate and looking round in bewildered astonishment. Then they disappeared over a stile into another road. Here a small person at the rear of the procession set up a plaintive cry. Oh, I'm tired of the country. Oh, I want to go home. Eglantine came to the rescue. If you don't shut up making that noise, Christine Hawkins, she said, a cow or something will eat you. You never knows in the country. The sound ceased as by magic. William led his friends along the road. At a pair of iron gates leading past a lodge into a winding drive, Eglantine stopped. I'm tired of walking along this here road, she announced. Let's go in here. Even William was aghast. It's someone's garden, he explained. Thought you could go anywheres you liked in the country, said Eglantine aggrievedly. That's what they said anyway. They said you could go anywheres you liked in the country. Dunno why we came, she ended wearily. The shrill wail rose again from the back of the crowd. Oh, I'm tired of the country. I want to go home. Eglantine entered the gate determinedly. Come on, she said. They'll turn us out, said William. Eglantine squared her thin shoulders. Let him just try turning me out, she said. Not much, murmured William, proudly. They passed with no opposition up the first part of the drive. Then Eglantine saw a hedge with a gate in it, and marshalled her party through that. Within they saw a lawn, some gardens, and a fountain. Looks all right, commented Eglantine loftily. A young man rose languidly from a hammock in the trees. I beg your pardon, he said delightedly. Granted, said Eglantine, not to be outdone in politeness. Can I do anything for you? The young man said. We're St. Luke's and St. Mary's, explained Eglantine importantly. I see, said the young man. You, I presume, are a St. Mary, and he of the horsey headgear is a St. Luke. Said Eglantine, pointing at William. He's a orphan. The young man adjusted a monocle. Really, he said, how intensely interesting. We've come into the country for a holiday, went on Eglantine, and we just come here in here to see what it was like in here. How extremely kind of you, said the young man. I hope you like it. Eglantine surveyed the scene distantly. With a band and some swings and a ice cream cart, it'll be all right, she admitted. The young man sighed. I suppose so, he said. Most of the children were already making the best of their opportunities. Some were chasing butterflies, some picking flowers. Some had taken off shoes and stockings and were paddling in the ornamental pond. The young man watched them rather despondently. If I'd known that you were coming, he said, I'd have procured something in the way of a band and ice cream cart. So obviously he did understand what she was saying. Eglantine again was not to be outdone in politeness. She stood, a curious picture in her blue dress, white stockings, yellow boots, with her over-frizzed hair standing out around her sharp little face, beneath her feathered hat, and nodded slightly. Hats of no consequence, she said graciously. She had the situation entirely in hand. Even William, born leader as he was overshadowed by her, and was content that it should be so. Just as two small boys had climbed the pedestal in the middle of the ornamental pond and were endeavouring to stop up the fountain, a butler came down the path with an expression of horror on his face. The young man waved him away. It's all right, Thompson, he said. Yes, sir, said the man, but her ladyship has arrived, sir. Her ladyship has had her boxes sent upstairs. I thought I'd better warn you, sir. The young man groaned. Is there time for me to be summoned to town? He asked. I'm afraid not, said the butler. She's coming to find you now, sir. Here she is, sir. A large woman bore down upon them. She wore a large cloak and a large hat, and several Pomeranians trotted at her heels. That's another old-fashioned small dog, Pomeranian. I shall find a picture for you, just so you can visualize it. And they have a tendency to be fluffy. Pomeranian, here you go. Save image as, and open image over here. 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 I'm going to have to resize this one because it's huge. Sorry. It does them at the same scale as what I already have. This is a Pomeranian, one of these fluffy things. Kind of like how people have Bichon Frise now, but these are more densely fluffy and it's a little bit shorter. It can be a little bit yappy, but that's just the way they are. Anyway, so that's the next one. Sorry, I'm just finding the right one to carry on with after this. So there you go, that's two different sorts of dogs we've seen. Cavalier King Charles Spaniel is the proper name, otherwise just known as a King Charles Spaniel, and Pomeranian. So, several Pomeranians trotted at her heels, so these are her little companions that she has with her all the time, probably. The young man rose to receive her. "Here you are, Bertram," she said. "You didn't invite me, but I've come." "How awfully good of you," said the young man dispiritedly. The lady put up her lorgnettes and surveyed the children. Remember, lorgnettes are those spectacles on a handle that you would hold on to hold in so you could see. We looked them up last time. The lady put up her lorgnettes and surveyed the children. "Who are these ragamuffins?" she said slowly and distinctly. "Oh, just a little party of mine," said the young man pleasantly. "St. Luke's and St. Mary's. You'll get awfully fond of them. They're very lovable." The lady's face became stony. "Are you aware," she said, "that they are trampling on the flowers and splashing in the pond and sitting on the sundial?" "Oh, yes," he smiled. "Just jolly childish pranks, you know. And that one in the awful tweed cap." "He's an orphan," said the young man. "I'm going to give you the room next to his." He's seen this as an opportunity to deal with her. "He's got quite a jolly voice. I heard him humming to himself a moment ago." At this point, 4 things happened. 1. William, who had wandered over the flower beds, was suddenly impelled by the general brightness of the day to give vent to his feelings by a burst of song. "One more river, and that's the river of Jordan. One more river, there's one more river to cross." He yelled the words happily in his strident young voice. 2. The small pessimist again lifted up her voice in a wail. Oh, I'm tired of the country. I want to go home. Oh. 3. Eglantine, who had surveyed the visitor in outraged silence for a few moments, at last burst forth. She set her thin hands on her thin hips and began, "And who are you to talk about ragamuffins? Queen of England, are you? And what about your own act? Insulting of other people and other people's gardens." 4. The 5 Pomeranians, excited by the uproar, burst into simultaneous yapping. Remember? I said they yapped. Above the horrible sounds of William's song, the pessimist's wails, Eglantine's recriminations, the Pom's yapping, the lady screamed to her nephew. "I'm going straight home, Bertram. When you have a Christian house to invite me to, perhaps you'll let me know." "Yes, Aunt," he screamed back. "Shall I see you to your car?" He left them for a few minutes and returned, mopping his brow, in time to rescue 3 boys from an early death by drowning in the pond. William and a few other daring spirits were balancing themselves at a dizzy height on the top of the wall. The young man was beginning to look pale when once more the butler appeared. Oh yes, here you go. Here's the picture. There's William singing. There's his aunt, there's the young man, there's Eglantine declaiming that this one's being rude, and this is the one who's dissatisfied and is howling about wanting to go home. "There's a gentleman at the front door, sir," he said respectfully, "who seems in a great state, sir. And he says that he's lost some slum children." The young man's face brightened. "Ah," he said, "tell him I've found some and ask him to come and see whether they happen to be his. They've done me a very good turn, but I shouldn't mind being relieved of them now." "He was one of the swanks, and no mistake," said Eglantine to William. "I'd no patience with him and his way of talking. I can play the toff as well as any one of them when I likes. I did with him, didn't I? But I despises him." William was looking anxiously down the road where the tall man was taking them. "Where are we going?" he said distrustfully. "To the kind ladies who invited us to tea," said the tall man, overhearing him. William walked along in silence. Eglantine began to expatiate again. Sorry. I was trying to check what the chapter was called, and this one doesn't actually have them in the table of contents, just the chapter numbers. "Look at them houses," she said with a contemptuous glance at the houses between which they were passing. "What they want with such big houses. Swank, that's what it all is, swank. Living in big houses and talking so soft. I've no patience with him. I wouldn't be one of them, not for nothing." But William was growing more and more uneasy. "What are we going along here for?" he muttered truculently. The tall man turned in at a gate. William moistened his lips. "He's making a mistake," he murmured, pulling his checked cap still further over his eyes. At the door stood Mrs. Brown and Ethel. Their glance fell first on Eglantine. "What a dreadful child," whispered Mrs. Brown. Next it fell on all that could be seen of Eglantine's companion. "What an appalling cap," whispered Ethel. Then they advanced to welcome them. "Here we are," said the tall man with a note of relief in his voice. "Here we are. We've had a delightful time, quite a delightful time, on the whole. Just a little misunderstanding at one point, temporary separation, but all's well that ends well. It's too kind of you. This is Eglantine, and this little boy is an orphan, poor little chap." Mrs. Brown laid her hand tenderly on the tweed cap. "Poor little boy," she began. "Poor little—" Then she met the eyes beneath the tweed cap. "William," she said sharply, "take off that horrible cap and go and wash your face." William, clean and brushed and frowning, sat and glared across the table at his late friends. He felt himself disgraced forever. He was a pariah, outside the pale, one of the swanks who lived in big houses and talked soft. His mother's and Ethel's intonation and accent seemed at that moment a public humiliation to him. He did not dare to meet Eglantine's eyes. Fiercely he munched a currant bun. Into his unoccupied hand stole a small grimy one. "Never mind," whispered Eglantine. "You can't help it." And William whispered gratefully, "Not much." So Eglantine was fond of him anyway. And that's the end of that chapter. So I'm going to have some crackers, finish off my coffee, and have a drink of water. And what about you? What are you going to do? Sorry, I've got an itchy eye now. No, not from the cat. Not this time. Just sometimes happens. I did actually find the style of hat that he was wearing. Yes, I have a very loud keyboard. Here you go. Here's an interesting picture. This is probably the sort of stuff that William would have worn for school at the time. I'm just wondering if I've shown you this picture before. It seems vaguely familiar, possibly with one of the other William books. There you go. See, he's wearing a cap and a jacket for his school, a blazer, shorts, socks, shoes, and he's carrying a little school bag case. So there you go. Right, crackers. I don't know how noisy these ones are going to be. Very. I'm going to turn the sound off for now. There you go. School uniform. These ones are not wearing blazers, they're just wearing jerseys and shirts and caps. That's a Getty Images one. This one here is carrying his books under his arm and they're all bound up with a leather strap. And the other chap, that's his book strap over his shoulder and the books are hanging behind him. A common way of carrying your school books back in the day. Just checking that you can actually hear me this time because of course you couldn't before. I was saying, I'll put it back, 2 schoolboys, this is Getty Images image, wearing jerseys or jumpers, pullovers, carrying a bundle of school books held together with a leather strap. This chap has got his books hanging behind him and the strap comes up over his shoulder. And that was actually a common way for carrying that sort of thing to school because you would be walking to school. They're both wearing school caps. See how it has a very, very small brim peak at the front. those hats are actually technically are a little bit big for them, but they obviously don't really sit down deep on the boys' heads, just because that's the way they wore them. And we're about to have our second chapter. I'm just getting ready the next picture for our story. Here we go. Chapter 6 of William Again by Richmal Crompton. William and the White Cat. Ooh, interesting. I wonder what this is about. William had before now met the strange species of male who succumbed to the charms of his elder sister. His elder sister is Ethel, and apparently she's very appealing to a certain type of young man. And so we're going to have a little bit of a situation, I think, because of this. William never could think what people saw in Ethel, as one doesn't when one is an 11-year-old boy and it's your older sister. Red hair and blue eyes and a silly little voice. Some people, thought William, might call her pretty, but crumbs, what a temper! Making a fuss if his dog Jumble chewed up any of her old things, or if he just borrowed her bicycle, or if his pet rats got loose in her room. But she's so fussy. She didn't even like interesting things like pistols and rabbits and insects. Girls were bad enough when they were at school, thought William, but they were heaps worse when they grew up. The female sex was an entire mystery to William. Except in the case of his mother, he could see no reason for their existence, yet he grudgingly admitted to himself that Ethel's admirers had not been useless to him. There was Mr. French, who had given him his first couple of white rats. There was Mr. Drew, who had showered rare postage stamps upon him. There was Mr. Loughton, who had nervously pressed sixpence into his hand whenever they met. Excuse me. Just there, that's better, I think. Right, here we go. Just trying to get it to see me again. For some reason it didn't. Right, but Mr. Romford was different. He had a strange idea that William had no influence with his elder sister. Therefore, he wasn't going to try and bribe him. This happened to be true, but that made it nonetheless annoying to William. He thought it only right that any young man who was interested in Ethel should ensure his, William's, sympathy by practical means. Mr. Romford treated him as if he did not exist. William resented this very much. "What's he come for?" he said indignantly. "He doesn't take no interest in Jumble, nor the rats, nor the tool shed, nor the bridge what I'm making over the stream, nor me. What's he come for?" he demanded of his assembled family. They all replied to him. Ethel said coldly, "Don't talk about things that aren't your business." His mother said, "William, I wish something could be done about your hair. It never looks tidy." His father said, "That reminds me, William, you'd better go and weed your garden. It's in a disgraceful state." William went slowly to the door. "Mr. Romford's going to give me a Persian cat for a Christmas present," Ethel went on to her mother. William stopped. "What about Jumble?" he said indignantly. "What about Jumble with an old cat about the place? What about my rats?" Sorry, I have to actually take a phone call. I'll be back in a minute. And I'm back. Sorry about that. Just having to take a phone call from a family member who may or may not have been going to have problems, but it turns out they've got a minor power cut down where they are, and so have their neighbours. But us at the other end of the road don't. So nothing I can do about it. They were just checking. Anyway, carrying on. He was talking about this Persian cat that his sister Ethel's going to get. My rats have got about as much right to live as an old cat, you think, wouldn't you? My rats and poor old Jumble came here first. I think they did, considering that the old cat hasn't come yet. You'd think that Jumble and the poor old rats deserve a bit of peace. Go and give your hair a good brushing, William, said his mother. Take every one of those weeds up. You can't have touched it for weeks, said his father. You aren't the only person in the world who can keep animals, said Ethel. A lot of interest you'd take in animals, don't you, said William. In real animals, he exploded bitterly. A lot of interest you take in my insects and rats and things, don't you? I must say you take a lot of interest in them, he went on in heavy sarcasm. Cats! Who call cats an animal? They aren't interesting, are they? Who ever found cats interesting? They don't follow you like dogs, do they? They haven't interesting habits like insects. Oh, I must say they're very interesting. He saw Ethel and his mother gathering breath to speak. His father had retired behind the paper. He hastily went out, shutting the door firmly behind him. Cats, he remarked contemptuously to the empty hall, when William was walking slowly along the road, with his hands in his pockets and whistling. He felt at peace with all the world. He had a half-crown in his pocket. It would soon be Christmas. He was going to have a bicycle for Christmas. Ethel had insisted on his having a bicycle for Christmas, not for love of William, but because William's secret experiments with her bicycle had such dire results. He'll only smash it up if he has one, dear, his mother had said. Well, he'll only smash up mine if he doesn't, Ethel had replied. So William was going to have a bicycle and a mouth organ and pocket compass, in addition, of course, to the strange things always sent as presents by distant uncles and aunts. Those did not count. Pencil boxes and story books about curious exemplary boys and boxes of crayons and pens and things. They didn't count. Anyway, a bicycle was a bicycle. He wanted to be able to take a bicycle to pieces and put it together again. He'd never been able to have a really good try at Ethel's. She made such a fuss. He was thinking about this with a faint smile on his face when he observed a man coming along with a covered basket in his hands. It was Mr. Romford. William looked at him coldly. He had no hopes of a Christmas present from Mr. Romford, but Mr. Romford stopped. Are you going home, William? He asked. Yes, said William ungraciously. Would you mind taking this to your sister? It's a present I'm giving her for Christmas. Don't open the lid. It's a very valuable white cat. William took it. Something was moving about inside. It's in a highly nervous state, went on the donor. I shouldn't look at it if I were you. All right, said William coldly. William walked on down the road. His smile had gone. He no longer thought about Christmas. He swung the basket carelessly as he walked. An infuriated scratching and snarling came from inside. William swung it still more carelessly. I'm not a cat carrier, he muttered indignantly, making me into a cat carrier for him. He sighted Ginger, his ever-faithful friend and ally, in the distance, and hailed him with a piercing whistle. Ginger came to him. Just by the way, no animals were actually harmed. This is all make-believe, okay, before you get worried, because I'm not quite sure where this one's going. Ginger came to him. What do you think's in here? Queried William. I don't know. An old cat. And whose do you think it is? Dunno, said Ginger. Well, a man's given it to my sister. And how much do you think he's given me for taking it? Dunno. Nothing, said William bitterly. Nothing. making a cat carrier of me for nothing. Listen at it, said Ginger, enraptured. It's been carrying on something dreadful ever since I got it, said William. It's a beautiful, nice, quiet cat, isn't it? It'll be nice for Jumble and those poor old rats when this sort of wild thing gets loose, won't it? It'll be nice for them. Sarcasm was a new weapon of William's, as yet his use of it was heavy. Let's have a look at it, said Ginger. Oh, yes, said William. It's all right for you. You aren't going to have looks at it all the rest of your life. You ain't going to have your life and the lives of your dog and rats made a misery by it for the rest of your life. I don't feel inclined to waste time looking at it. Listening at its carrying on's enough for me just at present. You've not been made a cat carrier for nothing. You don't feel like I do about it. Let me just peep, William. All right, if you take any interest in it. I don't. I should think there's some law about giving wild animals for presents. There ought to be. Human life ought to be sacreder than what it seems to be to him. All right, look at it. Don't blame me if it leaves its mark on you for life. It's a nice, quiet-tempered sort of cat. Oh, yes, very, he laughed sarcastically. Ginger cautiously opened the basket top a fraction of an inch. A small white paw shot out. Ginger closed it hastily and sucked his hand with an expression of agony on his face. Golly, he said. There, said William triumphantly. Didn't I tell you? It'll probably give you blood poisoning. All I hope is if you die of it, he'll get hung. He ought to be sending wild cats without taming 'em first. Ginger assumed a heroic expression. It wasn't much of a scratch. Let's have another look. He opened the lid of the basket again. Both William and Ginger disclaimed responsibility for what followed. William said he wasn't touching it, and Ginger said he only opened it a bit, and he didn't know that the creature was mad. Not really mad, not right off its head like that. Anyway, a white ball of fury hurled itself out of the basket, dealt William a long scratch across his cheek, nearly tore off Ginger's ear, and disappeared over the nearest wall. Well, said William coldly, what are you going to do now? Me? Said Ginger. Yes, just tell me how you're going to replace a valuable cat, what you've just let loose. Just tell me what I'm going to do. Am I going to go home and say I've got a valuable cat in a highly nervous state and then find there's nothing in the basket but just air? This is all I get for being his cat carrier. Well, you let it loose and you got to replace it. That's sense, isn't it? I was just quietly carrying a valuable cat in a highly nervous state down the road and you come along and let it loose. Well, what you going to do? Well, what can I do? Said Ginger helplessly. I didn't know the thing was a cat lunatic, did I? It ought to be in a cat asylum. You never told me you was carrying a wild cat or a mad cat. You just said a cat. But the white ball of fury had appeared again, flying over the wall and down the road at full speed. William grasped his empty basket and started after it. Come on, he shouted as he ran. Come on, catch it, catch it. They raced down the road after the flying white ball, first the cat, then William, then Ginger, through a garden, leaving a cursing gardener in their rear, in and out of a house, leaving its irate owner ringing up the police. First the cat, then William, then Ginger, breathless and afire with the chase. Along a wall, the cat on top and William and Ginger at the foot. They nearly got her then. She fell into a rain tub in a private garden at the foot of the wall, but scrambled out and fled again, dripping and grimy, through a muddy ditch. The ball of fury was now not white, but a dingy grey. Ditch. Imagine this. Down the side of the road, the rainwater runs off the road and into this, full of water and mud. And the cat has been in there. This white Persian cat. Dingy grey, and suddenly right into a tabby cat with a broken ear, who was washing its face by the roadside. That means it's a stray or a fighter. There was a whirl of claws and flying fur. Get it now, yelled William. Get it while they're fighting. Ginger seized the basket and effected the capture neatly, but not without a dozen or so more scratches. They fastened up the basket and resumed their journey. Here we go. Let's see if I've got the right picture now. Yes, I do. There you go. Cat fight. William, Ginger. Ginger's got the basket, ready to catch the cat. Any guesses as to what's going to happen when the cat's let out of the basket? I'm not going to spoil this one. Well, you can't say I didn't do that, can you? Said Ginger vaingloriously. You can't say I didn't do that pretty neatly. You can't say you helped me much there. I bet if you'd got all these scratches there'd be some sort of a fuss. Yes, and who let it loose? That's all I'm asking. Who let it loose? Oh, come on. Let's get it home. I'm about sick of it. I'm about sick of being his cat carrier. They walked along in silence for a bit. Seems a bit quieter, doesn't it? Said Ginger. Speckett knows it's no use making a fuss. Speckett didn't quite know before what sort of a cat catchers we was. Let's have another look at it, William. Oh, yes, and go letting it loose all over the place again. Oh, yes, do. It's quiet now. It'll not mind me looking. I want to see if it's got very dirty. William weakened. I'll have a look at it this time, he said. Then perhaps it won't get loose all over the place. Cautiously, he opened the basket lid. Over his face came a look of horror. It faded, leaving it grim and scornful. Oh, yes, you did it, he said with heavy sarcasm. You did it pretty neatly, as you said you did. Oh, yes, I didn't help much. Oh, yes, you caught it. He opened the basket wider. A friendly tabby with a broken ear regarded them and gave a tentative purr. Oh, yes, you caught it all right, but you caught the wrong one. Ginger looked at it, aghast, speechless. Then he pulled himself together. Well, we'll have to pretend it's the one. Oh, yes, said William. She'll believe it's a valuable white cat in a highly nervous state, won't she? Oh, yes, she's quite likely to believe that. They sat down by the roadside and stared at each other hopelessly. The tabby showed no signs of wishing to leave them, though in their despair they had left the basket open. We might do something to make it nervous, suggested Ginger feebly. He began to make strange noises of obviously hostile and insulting intent to the cat. The cat began to purr. William watched with cold scorn. Oh, yes, and then do something to make it valuable, and then do something to make it white. They were both strangely silent at this last suggestion. The hopelessness of their countenances seemed too clear. It mightn't stay on, of course, said William, but it might make it look all right for a bit. Where can we get some? Asked Ginger cryptically. Perhaps old Lawkins has some, said William. You can pay for it. They carefully replaced the tabby cat in the basket and went towards the village shop. William entered and stated his needs. White paint, said the shopman. I think so. For ironwork? Well, admitted William, it's really for fur. I mean, he corrected himself hastily, for something a bit softer than iron. For wood? Suggested the old man. I expect that'll do, said William. And a brush too, please. They retired to a deserted field to perform the delicate task. William took the brush in one hand and put down the paint pot on the grass by his feet. Then he took out the cat. Now, I'm going to do this, he explained, because I want it done properly. I don't want this cat let loose all over the place. He held the cat in one hand and drew a bold line of white paint down its back. The next moment he was sucking a deep red scratch on either hand, and a white-flecked tabby cat was disappearing in the distance. You did that all right, didn't you? Said Ginger, not without satisfaction. William rose wearily, picked up the empty basket. He was too disheartened even to save what was left of the paint. Oh, let's leave it and go home, said Ginger. Oh, yes, that's all right, burst out William. It's all right for you. You've not got to go home and say you've lost a valuable white cat in a highly nervous state, what someone was giving to Ethel. Well, "What can I do?" said Ginger. "You can produce some sort of a cat," said William firmly. "That's all I say. You let the first one loose all over the place and you can produce another. That's all I can say. I'm not going home without some sort of cat. All I ask you is to produce some sort of cat." "I wish you'd stop saying that," said Ginger irritably. "Well, produce one and I will," said William imperturbably. "There ought to be a lot of cats about," said Ginger. "Let's go to the road again." They went down the village street. Only one cat was to be seen. William and Ginger approached it cautiously. "Puss, puss," said William hoarsely. "Puss, puss," said Ginger in honeyed accents. "Pretty puss, pretty puss." "And I feel more like murdering it," said William. The cat sidled up to them. William picked it up, stroking it affectionately, with an expression of intense hatred on his face. "Open the basket, Ginger, quickly." "Mother!" came a shrill voice in his rear. "Boys are stealing our cat!" William dropped the cat and fled down the road, followed by a broomstick flung after him by the cat's owner, and a stone thrown by the child. The extent to which William's spirit had been broken by his troubles is shown by the fact that he endured these outrages without retaliation. When it was safe to relax his speed, he turned to Ginger. "I'll try one more cat," he said, "and that's all. I've done with cats after that." They found one more cat. It responded to William's oily flattering. It deigned to be taken up in his arms and stroked. It was not until it was almost lowered into the basket that it showed the falseness of its friendliness. Its wildness then surpassed even the wildest of the first occupant of the fateful basket. "Well, I've done with cats," said William solemnly, withdrawing his hand from his mouth and watching the furry, flying creature in the distance. "I've done with cats. If they was to come in crowds now asking to be put in the basket, I wouldn't touch them. I've done with cats. I'll feel sick whenever I see a cat for the rest of my life." A boy came down the road, his pockets bulging with something that moved. "What's that?" said William without interest or spirit. The boy took out a small furry animal. "Ferret. Me dad catches rabbits with 'em. You got to be careful how you 'olds 'em." "Will you sell it?" asked William sadly, taking out his half-crown. "It's not a cat," said Ginger wearily. But William had not lost his optimism. "Some folks don't know much about animals," he said hopefully. "They might think it was a cat." William's father and mother and sister were in the morning room when he entered with his basket. He held it out to Ethel. "There's your cat," he said. "From Mr. Romford?" "Yes," said William gloomily. She opened the lid a fraction and then shut it in silence. She looked mystified. "'Tisn't a cat." William's face was expressionless. "All I can say is what he told me," he said in a monotonous voice. "He said it was a valuable white cat in a highly nervous state." "This? It may have got a bit mixed up on the way, but that's what he said. He said it was a valuable white cat in a highly nervous state." "You needn't keep saying that," said Ethel irritably. "It's what he said," said William doggedly. "He said distinctly that it was a valuable white cat in a—" "Be quiet, William." Just changing pictures again. "Be quiet, William," said his sister. And here is your picture, which has that as a caption. I think that's meant to be William's father. There's his mother, there's Ethel, and there's William, and this is the cat basket. William's father came across the room and held the lid open, peering in. Suddenly he withdrew his finger with a yell of pain and rushed from the room, uttering muffled curses. "Do you mean to say, William," said Mrs. Brown, "that Mr. Romford sent Ethel that, whatever it is?" "All I can say is what he told me," said William. "He said it was a valuable—" "Mother, if William says that once more I shall go mad." William came across to it curiously. "Let's have a look at it," he said. "Ow, ow, ow! It's bit me!" It was out of the basket suddenly and across the room. Ethel gave a piercing scream. and it met Jumble in the hall, and a mad chase ensued, scampering down the hall, around the drawing room, the crashing of a small table and all its ornaments, the ferocious growling of Jumble, then silence. "I can't stand much more of this," said Mrs. Brown. "I don't know what's the matter, or what the animal is, or whether it's killed Jumble or Jumble's killed it, but how any man could send for a Christmas present too. William, your finger's bleeding, and it's covered with dirt. You'd better go and wash it." "Yes, mother," said William meekly. Then he saw a man coming up the drive carrying a dirty, bedraggled white cat. "Look," he said in an awestruck voice, "that's him." "It's Mr. Romford," said Ethel. She went out into the hall. The conversation was distinctly audible. "How do you do, Miss Brown? I'm afraid there's been some little accident. Thank you very much," said Ethel coldly, "but we don't want any more cats here." "I'm afraid there's been The kindest thing to think, Mr. Romford," said Ethel, "is that you hadn't the least idea what you were doing. There's been My father and poor little brother have been very badly injured. These things often prove fatal," said Ethel. "There's been My mother is terribly upset by it. You must excuse me if—" "I can explain, Miss Brown." "I dare say you can. You must excuse me. Goodbye." She shut the door and returned to the morning room. "Go and wash your hands, William," said Mrs. Brown. William was watching Mr. Romford's crestfallen departure. His indignation returned. "Making me his cat carrier," he muttered. "William, will you go?" "And how much do you think he gave me for bringing it?" said William. "I've no idea, and if once the dirt gets right into a bite like that—" "Nothing," said William dramatically, as he turned to the door. And that's the end of the chapter. There you go. So it kind of worked out for William. The guy wasn't prepared to give William anything as a way of just sort of greasing the wheels. And he lost his standing with Ethel. Even though he was bringing this dirty cat up the driveway, Ethel wasn't interested because she was only focused on the fact that the ferret was what she thought he had given them. And so he's been sent packing. There you go. William's had his way, kind of, except he's injured and he's blah, blah, blah. All those sort of things. Life is not without its ups and downs in William's life. Anyway, we are not going to be reading any more today, but I will tell you the next chapter is chapter 7. It's called William's Secret Society. Ooh, I bet there's going to be passwords and special places and all sorts of things like that. It sounds about right, doesn't it? That's very much a William sort of a thing. We'll find out next time, won't we? Now, today is Friday, so that means Monday. That's 2 days' time from now. 3 days. Saturday, Sunday, and then on Monday. Yeah, there you go. That's when it is. So 3 days from now, I shall be reading again in about an hour and a half's earlier than what we currently are, for whatever time zone it is that you're in. I read 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3 p.m. New Zealand time, and I usually start my stream officially before then with a starting soon screen, which means that if you arrive before 3 p.m. New Zealand time, you'll get the advertising things that they do on Twitch out of the way before I start reading, and you won't miss anything. There you go. So if you're looking for more things to listen to, more stories, then go to my YouTube channel, which is linked in my profile. If you're on YouTube and you want to be part of me reading when I'm reading live, being able to chat with me, find information for me and things like that, then if you look on my profile, you will find the link for me on Twitch. And we will see you next time. Have a wonderful weekend, or whatever it is for you. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.